Welcome to the 39th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now let's get into this. Starting with Nichelle Torres, who tells her mother, Isabel, that she's ready to graduate, but struggles to enjoy her senior year after Ulysses' passing. When Nichelle reveals she has no plans to attend college, Isabel is surprised and tries to convince her daughter that college could help her run their hotel, Theodosius's Palace. Nichelle insists she doesn't need college, pointing out that Isabel never went. Despite her concerns, Isabel supports Nichelle's decision, though she reminds her the option is always open. Nichelle, however, is firm in her choice. When Wanda Mitchell asks her daughter Yvette how school went, Yvette expresses that she wished she could have stayed home, still shaken from witnessing Kiev Burke take Ulysses Torres' life. Wanda reminds Yvette that being on probation made skipping school a bad idea, though she acknowledges the probation officer would have likely understood. Yvette hints that others at school are giving her a hard time but avoids discussing it. When Wanda's husband Udell enters, Yvette asks for space. Udell warns Wanda not to push Yvette too hard, but Wanda hopes Yvette will eventually learn to open up. When JJ and Vanessa Dorval return to the estate, JJ asks his older sister why she barely spoke to him. Vanessa reveals she's angry at JJ for making Max feel guilty over Ulysses' passing. JJ argues that Max should feel guilty, but Vanessa reminds him that Kiev is the only one to blame. JJ, burdened by guilt, believes he could have stopped Kiev and prevented the tragedy. As their argument escalates, their mother Shelley intervenes, reminding JJ that blaming others won't help. Though she promises to support him through his pain, JJ insists no one can ease his grief over losing Ulysses. After JJ walks off, Shelley encourages her daughter to pray for him. Vivian Jones tells Isidore Russo that her benefit in helping him take over Russo Jewelers is ensuring the company's future success. Isidore, skeptical, questions what she stands to gain. Vivian explains that she'll gain her way out of the mess she's in, but she won't return Lorenzo's shares until Isidore becomes the head of the company. Isidore notes the difficulty of a hostile takeover, but Vivian assures him she has a plan, convincing the family to hand shares to her, not him. Despite his concerns about the risks, Isidore reluctantly agrees to work with Vivian. Zeke questions Nichelle's decision to take over Theodosius's palace after graduation instead of attending college, wondering if it's influenced by Ulysses' passing. Nichelle assures him it's about making her mark and moving forward. Zeke supports her, though he cautions about the responsibility ahead. Nichelle is confident, feeling ready for the power and challenges after what she's endured. Jeremiah notices Shelley's somber mood, and she expresses concern over JJ's bitterness since Ulysses' passing. While Jeremiah urges patience, reminding Shelley that JJ is still adjusting after his coma, Shelley worries that his attitude is impacting the family, especially after his argument with Vanessa. Jeremiah reassures her, emphasizing the importance of supporting their children through their grief. Isidore asks his mother Clarice if she's noticed anything odd about Lorenzo, explaining that Lorenzo has barely spoken to him. Clarice, confused, says she hasn't noticed but noticed the tension in her family and urges Isidore and Alan to settle their differences. Afterward, Isidore asks Alan if he has noticed anything off, and Alan points out Lorenzo's disappointment over losing part of his inheritance and being involved with the woman who helped end Dante's life. Isidore asks Alan to stay vigilant. Vivian tells Pacho she successfully convinced Isidore to help with the plan to take over Theodosius's palace by turning the family against each other. Pacho is eager to see Isidore embarrassed when she refuses to hand over the Russo Jewelers shares. Vivian cautions that Isidore is sharp, and they discuss keeping Clarice unaware of any family tension. After reflecting on their success, they share a kiss, affirming their partnership. Vivian hands Gianni a project budget, and he complains about Isidore's last-minute demands. They discuss how difficult Isidore can be, with Gianni hinting that showing love to his brother is risky. When Vivian probes further, Gianni shuts down the conversation, unwilling to trust someone who works for Isidore. Despite Vivian's reassurances, she leaves, determined to keep trying to break through Gianni's tough exterior. Ben visits Max at the Russo estate, concerned that Max is blaming himself for Ulysses' passing. Max admits feeling guilty for not recognizing the warning signs with Kiev. Ben tries to comfort him, sharing his own past guilt over their Aunt Elvira's death and urging Max not to carry that burden. Max walks away, still struggling with the weight of the situation. Alan visits his mother, Harley, to share the news of Finnegan's firing as police commissioner. Harley feels it's unfair since Finnegan couldn't defend himself after Keeve's attack, but Alan argues that Finnegan was unfit for the job. When Harley questions his coldness, Alan blames Finnegan for allowing Keeve to hurt Max and believes that if Finnegan wakes up, losing his job might cause him to leave Harley behind. At J. Dorval HVAC Services, Shelley informs Jeremiah that Isaac Pierce will replace Finnegan as the new police commissioner and plans to hold a town meeting. Jeremiah sees this as a positive change, given Finnegan's previous unfitness for the role. Shelley worries about what Finnegan might do if he wakes up and finds out he lost his job. Jeremiah reassures her that Finnegan is powerless now, even if he does wake up, but Shelley remains concerned, especially since Finnegan is Keeve's father. At Global News Press, Quinlan reads about an unidentified girl found in a suitcase and shares her unease with her boyfriend Ben, who calls to check in. Despite Pacho pushing her to cover school violence, Quinlan feels more drawn to the tragic story from her old neighborhood. Ben suspects she has a personal connection to it and encourages her to take control of her program's direction, but Quinlan doubts Pacho will listen. Ben suggests she try to compromise, so she doesn't feel like a puppet in pursuing her dream. At the town meeting, Jeremiah and Shelley listen as Isaac Pierce introduces himself as the new police commissioner, pledging to serve Valley Park. Jeremiah asks if Isaac is a family man, to which he affirms his dedication to both his family and faith. Tension rises when Harley questions Isaac about replacing Finnegan, who's in a coma. Isaac defends his position, stating Finnegan is unfit for the job. After Harley leaves, Jeremiah and Shelley introduce themselves, and Isaac later reassures his wife over the phone that moving to Valley Park will help her fulfill her dreams. Vivian tells Isidore over the phone that it will take time to earn Gianni's trust, and Isidore encourages her to be patient. After the call, Alan walks in and, noticing Vivian's hesitation, asks about her conversation. She reluctantly reveals that Lorenzo gave her half of his shares, leaving Alan confused. Vivian claims Lorenzo isn't in the right state of mind, and when Alan mentions that Isidore has been asking about Lorenzo's behavior, Vivian wonders if Isidore might take advantage. Alan, unsure at first, agrees with Vivian, who then suggests they consider a new plan for the company's future. After a call, Isidore runs into Isabel at the penthouse and expresses relief that she's back at work. Isabel, still mourning, explains she can't grieve in her room forever. When Isidore admits he couldn't stop thinking about her, Isabel questions why he's checking up on her, reminding him they were never really friends, just two young people who dated. Isidore confesses he never stopped loving her, despite knowing she's not ready for a relationship. As they discuss their past and her grief, they share a kiss, only for Pacho to interrupt them. Welcome to the 40th week of this year's In Times Like These recap. Now let's get into this. Starting with Wanda Mitchell, who runs into Owen Grant at Theodosius Palace, demanding he leave her alone. Owen attempts to rekindle their friendship, but Wanda bitterly reminds him that his actions nearly jeopardized her daughter Yvette's future. When Owen asks about her daughter Yvette, Wanda angrily rebuffs him, insisting he has no right to that information. Before leaving, Owen offers his condolences for Yvette's struggles, but Wanda dismisses his words, telling him not to waste her time. Owen cryptically warns Wanda that she'll be seeing more of him in the coming months before walking away. Udell Mitchell notices Yvette's distant behavior and questions her about it during their drive home. Yvette, however, shifts the conversation to her parents' strained relationship, asking if Udell ever forgave Wanda for kissing Owen. Udell admits that Wanda hurt him, but he's trying to keep the family together. When Yvette asks why Wanda hasn't come home yet, Udell suggests she's still at work. Yvette then questions if she'll end up making the same mistakes as her mother. Udell reassures her, but when he offers a hug, Yvette rejects it and walks away. Alan Russo and Vivian Jones discuss her plan to gather shares for a hostile takeover of Russo Jewelers. When Vivian reveals she needs half of Alan's shares to make the takeover convincing, Alan hesitates, worried about making another financial mistake. Vivian reassures him, emphasizing that tough decisions are needed to save the company. Alan, uncertain but wanting to prove himself to his family, reluctantly agrees to trust Vivian. She encourages him, praising his intelligence and telling him they'll prove his family wrong once he becomes the next CEO. Pacho Torres confronts Isidore Russo after catching him kissing Isabel. Pacho angrily accuses Isidore of taking advantage of Isabel's grief and questions if she's ready for a relationship. Isabel tries to defend herself, but Pacho insists she's not in the right frame of mind. Isidore offers to leave, but Isabel wants to discuss the situation. Pacho refuses, accusing Isidore of manipulating her in her vulnerable state. Before leaving, Isidore tries to reason with Pacho, who warns him to stay away from Isabel. After Isidore departs, Pacho leaves, unsure of what he'd do if Isidore returns. Wanda offers to spend the weekend with Yvette, who has been busy with school and community service, but Yvette refuses, fearing her mom will bring up topics she doesn't want to discuss. Concerned, Wanda tells her husband Udell that she believes Yvette is depressed after the recent tragedy. Udell acknowledges Yvette's distance but feels she is coping in her own way. Wanda, frustrated, insists Yvette is hiding her true feelings and suggests therapy, but Udell argues that forcing it might push their daughter further away. The two struggle with how best to help Yvette. Pacho visits Vivian's apartment, where she proudly reveals she now holds more shares than anyone in her family, including her father. Pacho excitedly asks if she convinced Gianni to give up his shares, but Vivian reveals she actually got Alan's shares. She explains how Alan now believes he'll become the next CEO of Russo Jewelers, which amuses Pacho. As they discuss Alan, Vivian mentions her nephew once hit on her, unaware that Vivian was his aunt, leading them to joke about the awkwardness. Confident in her position, Vivian predicts she'll be CEO by the end of the year, while Pacho suggests distracting Isidore as part of their plan. At Russo Jewelers, Alan apologizes to his grandfather Lorenzo for having an affair with Terry. Lorenzo, skeptical of Alan's sudden remorse, questions his sincerity, accusing him of trying to secure a future where he can run Russo Jewelers after Isidore. Alan insists he's trying to reunite the family, but Lorenzo refuses to believe him, pointing out that Alan supported Terry despite her betrayal of the family. Lorenzo declares that Isidore and Alan will never lead the family, preferring Gianni and Max. As Alan leaves, he hints at his plan for a hostile takeover, claiming his conscience is clear. Quinlan Franklin enters Pacho Torres' office at Global News Press, eager to cover the story of an unidentified girl found in a suitcase. Pacho, busy preparing for their initial show, questions why she wants to lead with this story. Quinlan insists the case needs exposure, but Pacho reminds her of their agreement to focus on another project first. Frustrated, Quinlan asserts that it's her show and demands respect, while Pacho counters that it's his network and he calls the shots. As tensions rise, Pacho warns Quinlan that her show's success depends on him, leaving her to question if he plans to sabotage it. At Russo Jewelers, Vivian enters Gianni's office to apologize if she offended him during their last conversation. Gianni assures her he wasn't offended, but admits he's wary of her because she works under his scheming brother Isidore. Vivian insists she's not like Isidore and only wants to work in PR, questioning Gianni's concerns. Gianni explains that Isidore has deceived him in the past, and Vivian assures him she doesn't condone Isidore's behavior. Gianni softens, apologizing for his attitude, and Vivian appreciates him starting to see her as more than just Isidore's intern. At the Russo estate, Alan approaches Clarice, expressing concern about Lorenzo's growing anger. Clarice, frustrated, reminds Alan that she urged him to make peace with Lorenzo. Alan claims he tried, but Lorenzo rejected him. When pressed about what caused the conflict, Alan reveals that Lorenzo allegedly wished Elvira was still alive, and that Alan had never existed. Shocked, Clarice can't believe Lorenzo would say such a thing, but Alan insists he's telling the truth, suggesting that Lorenzo may need a break from Russo Jewelers to clear his head. Max approaches JJ, hoping to resolve their differences after Ulisa's death, but JJ feels it's impossible. Max, saddened by the tension, reminds JJ of their past friendship and his relationship with Vanessa, hoping they can move forward. JJ, however, is focused on how their mistakes ended his friendship with Ulissa and insists there's only one way forward. Max must stay away from Vanessa. Max refuses, determined to support Vanessa after losing Ulissa. As Max walks away, JJ is left frustrated, unwilling to accept Max's presence in his sister's life and eager to take action. At the Russo estate, Clarice confronts Lorenzo about his retirement, suggesting it's time for him to step down from Russo Jewelers. Though Lorenzo asserts he's still fit to lead, Clarice presses him, citing his strained relationships with Isidore and Alan. Lorenzo refuses to change his stance, hinting at deep betrayals by Isidore and Alan, but declines to reveal details. This leaves Clarice unsettled, prompting her to meet with Alan, where she admits he was right about Lorenzo's stubbornness. Determined, Clarice vows to do whatever it takes to push Lorenzo into retirement. Isidore meets with Isabel at Theodosius's palace, surprised by her invitation. Isabel asserts that Pacho doesn't control who she keeps in her life, but admits she can't have Isidore around while she's mourning Ulissa. Isidore agrees to give her space, assuring he never intended to manipulate her. Reflecting on their past, Isabel acknowledges that while Isidore has hurt others, he never meant to harm her. Despite their undeniable connection, Isabel insists they can't be close right now. When Isidore asks if there's a chance for them in the future, she says it's uncertain, and he walks away, willing to wait. Gianni informs Heidi that there's news she should hear, but before he can explain, Owen enters and announces he's running against her for district attorney. Shocked, Heidi questions Owen, who suggests she check the local news. He taunts her with the idea of early retirement, pointing to her family's recent scandal. Heidi, unfazed, defends her position. Owen hints at her potential run for mayor, but Heidi dismisses the idea. After Owen leaves, Gianni checks on Heidi, who declares she's ready for the challenge ahead. Quinlan tells Ben that while Pacho won't block her from covering the girl in the suitcase story, he plans to sabotage her program. Enraged, Ben offers to confront Pacho, but Quinlan urges him not to get involved, saying she'll focus on gathering information about the unidentified girl. She plans to investigate the south side where the girl was found by speaking to her contacts there. Ben expresses concern, but Quinlan insists she can handle it, having grown up in that tough environment. When Ben asks why she's so connected to the case, Quinlan admits she could have easily been that girl. Can't get enough of the crazy world of In Times Like These? Then, treat yourself to a binge watch of In Times Like These. Don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. You're not ready for what's to come, but tune in anyway.